Hi, so I want to share another set of tips relating to nutritional healing, which is not quite the topic of my channel, as my channel relates to the rise of psychiatry and modern psychology and the destruction of education in our society. However, there is a genuine concern regarding the food situation in the world at the moment, the poisoning of water, processed food, and so much concerning that topic. Now, there are millions of videos online and on YouTube and all social media platforms, loads of creators who discuss that topic. So I'm not doing that because this is not my topic, but I just want to share information about it because we're back into, the brave new world, the George Orwell 1984, population control and all that jazz, purely on the basis of reducing people's ability to critically think, dumbing down subjects, and pushing people into ignorance. So concerning food, this is what I did a few years ago, purely, from a critical thinking point of view. And you may be interested in doing something similar for yourself, just to go and research for yourself. And I love ancient history, particularly ancient warfare. I'll do a little video on this because it's to do with critical thinking. But I've always had an interest on, how did people eat 2,000 years ago or even before that? You're carrying your packs and you're marching 25 miles a day. What did people eat? So I always had this kind of interest. And recently, obviously, with the situation with the food poisoned environment, more and more studies coming out that ADHD, autism, all those sorts of quote unquote mental disorders are very much related to poisoning of the body. So there's a lot on this, but this is what I did. I went and looked for informational books of how did people eat before the rise of processed food, Industrial Revolution. It was around that time, shortly after. What did people eat? What were their routine? And I just found some really interesting things. And one example of it was this is 1985 series by English Heritage. English Heritage is the national charity in the UK that looks after English historical castles. I'm a member of English Heritage. I love it. I love visiting castles. And they produced this set of books on food. So food and cooking in prehistoric Britain, food and cooking in Roman Britain. Then you had food and cooking in medieval Britain. And that was 16th century Britain. And I think we have 17th century, 18th century, let's say, and more modern. And that gives you all sorts of information on what was happening and quotes as well from text of that time. Then they also produced Making a Meal of It, 2,000 years of English cookery. I was going to say British, but okay, I'm going to use the whole of Britain here. And again, it's very interesting because it kind of describes what people ate and how they ate. And puts up quite a number of quotes going back to Roman times. So then you can really see, what was happening, because in many instances, people only ate, say, one meal a day, and they were fine. But it's not so much that, it's like, what did they eat and how did they fare and how they got on. And another one, and this I really recommend, this is Eating for Victory. So these books are reproduction of pamphlets issued by the British government during World War II. And you can pick those books up online. You can also pick them up at the museums around England, usually the Imperial War Museums and similar museums. And I just want to show you something because it's really interesting. So in it, he will have all sorts of reproduction of the leaflets, the menus, the recommendation that the government was issuing to people in order to manage to eat well despite the war and despite the rations. But what's really fascinating is you also have reproduction of government leaflets on vitamins and how the government was recommending people to eat. And it is 180 degrees opposed to what's being done now. But just a good example here is, it goes on here about air, water, heat. Too much of any of these will destroy the vitamin C. Therefore, have your vegetables as fresh as possible. Best of all, grow them yourself. And it says the Ministry of Agriculture's free cropping plan shows you how to get a regular supply of fresh vegetables all through the year from a small garden or plot. Now, if you imagine that right now, farmers in the UK are being paid off not to grow food. and we have a real situation where land is being acquired for other purposes than agriculture. So here we're in 2025 and people are being prevented to grow. And back here during the war, it was the other way around. So you can really see what's going on in trying to change people's mind with false information. So this is why I recommend, go and do your research. Go and look. But these books are actually a wealth. They are actually a source of wealth in terms of information. They are brilliant, and they really demonstrate the changes over the last few decades. But you'll find some government pamphlets making sure that people take their vitamin A, their B, their C, their D. And, you know, recently in the last few years with a certain event in 2020, there was a lot of information about taking vitamin D, for example, and that was poo-pooed by certain quarters. So anyway, just something else to think about.